Hello, everyone. This is the Berean Challenge Persecution Prayer List for the week of March 20th through 26, 2022. Before I get into the prayer list, I would like to remind everyone that in the description below, you can find a link to the PDF version of the prayer list, which will also have links to other videos, how to write to persecuted Christians, and the persecution prayer challenge through Open Doors. Our first story comes from Nigeria. It was posted on March 20th by Morning Star News. Suspected Fulani herdsmen on Thursday, March 17th, kidnapped 46 Christians and a number of their children in an attack in Kaduna State, Nigeria, sources said. The heavily armed terrorists attacked predominantly Christian Agunu Dutsi village, Kachia County in southern Kaduna State shortly after midnight. Agunu Dutsi resident Philip John said 16 men, 30 women, and an unknown number of children were abducted. They trooped into our village in large numbers and began shooting indiscriminately at anyone on sight, John told Morning Star News by text message. Village resident Luke Godwin Waziri said the attack lasted 2 hours and identified those kidnapped as Danjuma Yusuf, Judith Obadiah, Teresa Amos, Alheri Amos, Afiniki Rabo, Adamu Lawrence, Alkaili Inusa, Peace Stephen, Bobo Stephen, Baby Stephen, Janet Anthony, Patience Philip, Precious Philip, Eunice Matthew, Gadia Ishaya, Stephen Magaji, Joseph Stephen, Celeste Everest, Joshua Adamu, Rosaline Joshua, Moses Adamu, Joel Moses, Anita Moses, Josephine Solomon, Luke Levinus, Amanta Luca, Israel Linus, Joshua Aldu, Supreme Michael, Michael Unana, Rose Michael, Martins Vincent, Loretta Unana, Naomi Zachariah, Comfort Everest, Lillian Everest, Patience Titus, Samayina Linus, Caroline Linus, John Luca, Shedrach Luca, Benjamin David, Lois David, Akali, Timothy, and Isaiah Luca. Please pray along with us, most especially at this trying moment, Raziri said. A link to a YouTube video regarding this event by International Christian Concern is on the PDF of the Persecution Prayer List. Our next story is also from Nigeria. It was posted on March 23rd by Morning Star News. More than 100 suspected Fulani herdsmen and Islamic extremist terrorists on Sunday night, March 20th, killed 32 civilians, 2 soldiers, and possibly abducted a woman in an attack on a predominantly Christian town in Nigeria, sources said. In northern Nigeria's Kaduna State, the assailants raided the town of Kagoro, Ukara County from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m., residents said, destroying about 200 houses in 4 areas. Over 25 Christians were killed and houses and properties were burnt to ashes in an attack carried out by armed Fulani terrorists in Kagoro, town resident Samson Luka said in a text message to Morning Star News. Area resident Violet Peter said she was unable to contact relatives. My mom's family houses were all razed down and one of my cousins was burned to death in their house, Peter said. We haven't been able to reach some of our relatives. Lord, please. This is too much for us, added resident Flora Kundi. This is too much for us. My colleague has been killed. 2 military personnel were killed along with 32 residents of the Sonji Agban, Katanga, and Kadarko areas of Kogoro, said Samuel Aruwan, Kaduna State Commissioner of the Ministry of Internal Security and Home Affairs. Kogoro resident Jonathan Kish Adamu said he visited injured Christians being treated at the Evangelical Church Winning All Health Center in Fada, Kogoro on Monday morning, March 21st. Favor Gimbia Shikari said she heard gunshots from her base at the Evangelical Church Winning All Theological Seminary in Kogoro. I've never experienced what I did last night, she said. We could hear the gunshots very close to us. This is not the country we were enjoying before. Our children can't go to school today. We don't know our fate anymore. Our next story comes from Pakistan. It was posted on March 21st by Morningstar News. Authorities in Pakistan beat and arrested a Christian on Tuesday, March 16th, for allegedly making blasphemous comments on social media and later tortured him into confessing guilt, sources said. Cybercrime officials from the Federal Investigation Agency of Gujranwala Circle raided the Lahore home of Fansan Shahid, 54, shortly after midnight and took him into custody on allegations that he blasphemed Muhammad, Islam's prophet, in a comment on Facebook in 2019. His wife, Safiya Shahid, said, "When my husband opened the gate, over a dozen policemen rushed inside and started beating him up." Shahid said, "My 2 children and I screamed and cried as they tortured Shahid and searched the rooms." The agents seized Fansan Shahid's phone, a photograph, and his national ID card and put him into their vehicle, she said. They told her they were taking him to the Gujranwala city because the complaint against him had been registered by an Islamist cleric who is a resident of Sialkot district. Safiya Shahid said her husband lost his cell phone in 2019. "We believe that the lost phone was misused by someone to post the blasphemous comment because my husband did not use a passcode for its security, and his Facebook account was also logged on," she said. Our next story comes from Eritrea. It was posted on March 22nd by Church in Chains. In mid-March, 29 evangelical Christians were arrested when the Eritrean security forces raided a prayer meeting in a house in the capital of Asmara. It is understood that 17 women and 12 men were arrested and then taken to Mai Serwa prison camp located on the outskirts of Asmara. While it is not known what prompted the security forces raid, every residential area in Eritrea is known to have a government spy living there who observes what is going on in the neighborhood and reports any unusual activity to the authorities. Many churches have found that government spies pretending to be Christians have joined and reported on church members. The recently arrested Christians, like the vast majority of prisoners in Eritrea, have not been formally charged or brought to court and do not know when or if their detention will end. In similar previous cases, Christians have been held for a couple of weeks before being freed, but in other cases, they have been held for longer periods. Mai Serwa is a large, sprawling prison complex housing far more prisoners than its limited facilities were built to accommodate. Conditions at the complex and the other Eritrean prisons were condemned by Amnesty International in 2020. With overcrowding and general lack of adequate sanitation, healthcare, and food, conditions in these detention facilities are inhumane and a cause of major concern. Detainees are rarely allowed to bathe or wash their clothes. Shoes and slippers are strictly prohibited to prevent detainees from jumping over barbed wire fencing. Authorities do not provide personal hygiene products like soap, so detainees rely on their families for supplies. Prisoners are held in metal shipping containers in the complex holding more than 20 detainees and in halls measuring up to 10 by 20 meters. Often, prisoners take turns to sleep on bare floors, because beds or mattresses are not allowed. Release Eritrea, a Church in Chains partner organization, states the number of known Christian prisoners has increased to around 200 in recent months. The number had fallen to a low of approximately 130 in the summer of 2021 after a period during which many Christians were released. Our next story comes from Uganda. It was posted on March 22nd by Morning Star News. In Intanko village, Namutumba district, Muslim relatives on March 8th sprayed acid on former mosque leader Juma Waiswa, age 38, his 32-year-old wife Nasimu Nayagaga, and their 13-year-old daughter Amina Nagudi, after they put their faith in Christ the previous month, Waiswa said. They converted to Christianity when a pastor visited their home on the morning of February 17th and explained the gospel. When their relatives learned of their conversions, they called them to a meeting with other clan members on March 8th, Waiswa said. During the meeting, we were asked about our salvation, and we affirmed to them that we had believed in Jesus and converted to Christianity, Waiswa told Morning Star News. They told us to renounce Jesus, but we stood by the newly founded faith in Jesus. When we refused to recant our faith in Jesus, my father, Arajabu, recited some Quranic verses, and after that they forcefully started beating us with sticks as prescribed in the Quran, claiming that we were apostates, Waiswa said. As this was not enough, my father went inside the room and picked up a bottle of acid and began spraying it on us while the group started shouting Allahu Akbar, or Allah is greater. They were also shouting, "You deserve death," and then disowned us. On March 9th, while the three were receiving hospital treatment, their house was set ablaze, he said. The three are still undergoing hospital treatment. They requested prayer for healing and a place to stay after recovering. Our next story comes from India. It was posted on March 23rd by Church in Chains. An 18-year-old Hindu girl was shot and killed in Pakistan's Sindh province after she resisted an attempted abduction on March 21st. Pooja Kumari was reportedly killed by a man identified as Wahid Buks Lashari after he and two others broke into her home near the Chuhara Mandi area of Sukor in Sindh. Mr. Lashari, a Muslim, is said to have asked Ms. Kumari to marry him, but she refused. He and his accomplices initially attempted to abduct her before shooting her. Mr. Lashari was arrested on March 22nd and was subsequently remanded into police custody for 10 days. Some outlets have reported that Mr. Lashari has since confessed to the murder. Our next story comes from Sri Lanka. It was posted on March 24th by Mission Network News. In early March, a group of 600 people broke into a Sri Lankan church, Mercy Gate Chapel. They threatened the pastor with death if this worship service did not stop. Police arrived and managed to calm the crowd, but 60 Buddhist monks insisted the church was illegitimate. Rajiv Santhianathan with Christian World Outreach explains this religious situation. In the southern part of Sri Lanka, the majority of the Sinhalese ethnic group are Buddhist, and in the northern part, most people are Hindus. In Sri Lanka, there are close to 40,000 villages, and most of the religious persecution takes place more in the villages. Right now, Christian World Outreach works in the northern part of the country. Christian World Outreach can't just walk into the village and start publicly declaring Jesus. But once they build relationships, they can say in whose name they are bringing aid. Pray for the people of this village that they would find hope in the love of Jesus, and pray Christian World Outreach would have a chance to work with many more Sri Lankan villages, including those in the southern parts of the country. Our next story comes from Egypt. It was posted on March 24th by World Watch Monitor. On the night of February 15th, Magdi Fathi Shehata Awad Allah, a deacon at the Coptic Orthodox Church in the northeast of Alexandria and a human rights activist, was rushed to the hospital after he was stabbed 7 times by a Muslim neighbor, a local source told World Watch Monitor. Awad Allah, a father of 2, incurred his wounds when he tried to rescue his 17-year-old son Thomas, who was held against his will in the apartment of Mahmoud Abdel Rahman Farghali. World Watch Monitor source who said the man is known throughout the community for his anti-Christian comments said the incident unfolded this way. The teenager had been out on the street when Rahman Farghali asked him to buy medication for him because he said he was ill. However, when Thomas entered his apartment, the neighbor tried to stab him with a knife. Thomas managed to escape to the balcony, lock the door, and cry for help. His father, who was across the road, heard his shouts and rushed to the apartment. When he got no answer, Awad Allah forced his way in but was met by the neighbor and a knife. Rahman Farghali stabbed him multiple times in different parts of his body, shouting, "O Kafirs," or "O evidence, Allahu Akbar," the local source said. Neighbors took Awad Allah to the hospital in critical condition. Our next story is from Turkey. It was posted on March 25th by Mission Network News. Since 2018, Turkey has forced nearly 200 Protestant clergy and their families to leave the country. Intelligence officials claim they pose a security risk, but do not say how. The expulsions began after the U.S. sanctioned Turkey for imprisoning American pastor Andrew Brunson. Soner Tufan works with the Association of Protestant Churches in Turkey, a network of about 40 churches. He says 28 of those deported were Americans, with the rest from Britain, South Korea, Latin America, and other nations. Tufan said the church has a big problem with worship houses. There is no freedom to build our churches in Turkey. Additionally, pastors in Turkey have no way of getting trained. There is no Bible college. Also, we need to pray for the young generation. It's really difficult to raise godly children in Turkey. I have 3 children. All of them went to school where they were the only Christians. Tufan says this pattern has developed due to distrust and hatred of Christians in Turkey. The first day I became Christian, my older brother broke my nose, just because I became a Christian. That day I accepted this kind of life. When Christians try to register as Christian instead of Muslim, they have to take several extra steps. And when Christians die, it can be difficult to find a place available to bury them. We ask God to protect Christians in Turkey and to grow the church. Our last story comes from Ukraine. It was posted on March 25th by the Christian Post. Invading Russian troops have reportedly abducted a 50-year-old Ukrainian-American pastor in the southern city of Melitopol, a month after they captured the city's mayor, who was released 6 days later in exchange for 9 Russian soldiers. About 10 Russian soldiers arrived at the home of Dmitry Badyu, bishop of the Word of Life Church in Melitopol City last March 20th, and took him away, his family told NBC News. The family added that the troops also confiscated his American passport and the family's phones and other devices. The soldiers returned the following day and asked for his Bible and a sleeping bag, the national news reported. The Russian troops were not aggressive and seemed to know he was a pastor and a U.S. citizen, the pastor's wife, Helen Badyu, was quoted as saying. His eldest daughter, Esther Lily Badyu Ogawa, said they walked in and they just started kind of questioning him right away, like, Are you guys American citizens? That's one of the first questions they had. I am worried, Badyu Ogawa was quoted as saying. I mean, deep inside, I believe, and I want to believe that he's safe and he's going to come home. But of course, from not knowing exactly what's going on and how he is and not getting any information, that's what it is, of course, building up that worry inside. This is the end of this week's persecution prayer list. Again, I remind you that in the description below the video is a link to this week's persecution prayer list PDF, which has links to videos, the 40-day pledge to pray for the persecuted church, and a link to be able to write to persecuted Christians.